What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, and in this video, we're going to be checking out 4 phones that you can buy in 2020 for under $100. So let's get started. So the first device that we're going to be checking out here is the Liego S11. So this phone is currently being offered for $96.99, and you can get it at that price at banggood.com. So if you've never heard of Liego, they are a Chinese smartphone brand that is starting to become more popular. They focus on budget phones and they provide a lot of value, and this phone is certainly an example of that. So the device is dual SIM and works with GSM carriers. It features a very massive 6.3-inch display, and it's a 720p display with a PPI of 160 and a 19:9 aspect ratio. Now, the device up top here does have a water drop notch, and in that notch we have an 8 megapixel front-facing camera. And one of the most impressive features with the Liego S11 is that the phone features 64 gigabytes of internal storage with SD card expansion. So 64 gigs from a phone that's under $100 is pretty unheard of, honestly. Now, the phone does not have wireless charging, unfortunately, but we do get a fingerprint sensor on the back. So we'll try that out right now. So a very fast and responsive fingerprint sensor. So great to see that we do get that with the phone. And also on the back, we have a dual camera setup. So we have a 13 megapixel main camera and a 2 megapixel secondary camera so that you can do the portrait mode with the phone. So we do get portrait mode with the rear camera here, and that's really awesome, but the portrait mode doesn't work extremely well, so keep that in mind. Now, one of the most exciting features with the Liego S11 is that it features 4 gigabytes of RAM. So you heard that right, 4 gigs of RAM, and we're getting the MediaTek Helio P35 processor. Now, in the product listing for this phone, it actually says that it has the Helio P22, but I ran the CPU-X application to see what all the internal specifications really are, and it says that the phone has a Helio P35. So I'm fine with that, to be honest. And I did run the Antutu benchmark test to see what kind of scores we get with this phone. And I got an overall score of 83257. So what I recommend doing is comparing this score to the scores from all these other phones to choose which one you might want to get. And then, of course, compare it to your existing phone right now to see if it's a performance upgrade. Now, with the phone, we're also getting 1080p video recording, and it features a beefy 3,300 milliamp hour internal battery. So pretty good battery capacity with the Liego S11. Now, the software on here is Android 9 Pie, and it's a pretty stock version of Android. They didn't add any bloatware or anything, and they haven't really modified Android either. The only modification that I can really see is that these buttons on the bottom look a bit different from your typical Android navigation buttons. But beyond that, it's a well-optimized operating system. It'll give you smooth performance, and with 4 gigs of RAM, it's going to run like a champ. Now, taking a closer look at the hardware here, I already talked a lot about the front panel here, but we are getting a very large display that does look really good. So, it's amazing how for under $100, you're able to get a phone with such a great looking, crisp and sharp display with good colors, and also a display that's large in size. So this phone is excellent for viewing content, and whether you're going on social media or going on YouTube, it's going to be excellent for that. Now, on the left side of the phone, we have the slot for the micro SD card and SIM card. Then on the right side of the phone, we have the power button and volume button. Then on the top, we have the noise canceling microphone. And then on the bottom, we have the microphone, the USB-C port for charging and data transfer, and the speaker. So there is no 3.5mm headphone jack with Liego S11, unfortunately. They do include an adapter in the box, so you can pair that up with the USB-C port to plug in your 3.5mm headphones. But if you are looking for a phone with an actual headphone jack, you're going to have to consider one of the other options that I'm going to show you in this video. But that's the Liego S11. I would say the most impressive features certainly are 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM. It's hard to find those features in a budget phone nowadays, especially a phone that you can buy brand new. So I'm really impressed with the Liego S11 overall. The next phone I want to show you is from Xiaomi. This is the Xiaomi Redmi 8A. And I actually got this phone very recently. Now, it's available at many retailers for around $120, But you can actually buy it at banggood.com for just $98.99. And if for some reason they raise the price, I will include a promo code in the video description so that you can get it for under 100 bucks. Now this device is factory unlocked, just like all the phones here, and it supports GSM carriers. It's also dual SIM with a dedicated slot for the micro SD card, so that's excellent to see too. But with the phone, we're getting a very large 6.22-inch display, which is LCD. It's a 720p display with a PPI of 271 with a 19:9 aspect ratio. But the display looks really good overall, nice and crisp and clear with good colors. Maybe not the best viewing angles ever, but that's to be expected with an LCD display. And really overall, considering the price of this phone, I'm very impressed. Now we are getting a water drop notch design with the device. And up top here, we do have an 8 megapixel front-facing camera. Another cool thing too about this front-facing camera is that you do get portrait mode. Now the phone features 32 gigabytes of internal storage with SD card expansion, like I mentioned a second ago. So a decent amount of internal storage, definitely less than what you're getting with the Liego S11, but 32 gigs is still not bad for a phone at under 100 bucks. Now there is no fingerprint sensor with the Redmi 8A, unfortunately, and there's no wireless charging either. And you get a single camera on the back at 12 megapixels, but you do get portrait mode with this rear camera, and it does work really well. Now this blue color on the back side of the phone I think looks really amazing, so I'm really impressed with the color they chose for this device. You can also get it in fiery red, and you can get it in black as well. Now the phone features 2 gigabytes of RAM and the Qualcomm Snapdragon 439 processor. So 2 gigs of RAM is not too impressive, but I did run an Antutu benchmark test for the phone. So I'll pull that up right now, and we can check out that score. And I got a total score of 89512 with the phone. So a little bit higher than the score that I got with the Liego S11, but about the same, so pretty close overall. Now video recording with this device maxes out at 1080p. We're getting an extremely large 5000 milliamp hour internal battery, and the phone runs Android 9 Pie with MIUI 11. So I actually have Nova Launcher on here right now because I'm not a big fan of Xiaomi's stock launcher, because I like having an app drawer. But you can see when pulling down the shade, for example, this looks way different from stock Android. And then also going to the settings, this is way different from what I'm used to. But thankfully, the actual software is very well optimized, so the phone is going to run very smoothly. But with the phone, we're getting a pretty decent screen to body ratio, especially for an inexpensive phone like this one. We do get a little bit of a thicker bottom bezel here with the Redmi word mark. Then on the left side of the phone, we have the slot for the micro SD card and SIM card. And then on the right side, we have the power button and volume button. And then on the top, we have just the noise canceling microphone. And then on the bottom, we have a 3.5mm headphone jack. We have the microphone. We have a USB-C port for charging and data transfer. And we have the speaker. So overall, I think this is a very decent device. You know, kind of frustrating that there is no fingerprint sensor on the back. So you do have to put in your PIN code every time you want to unlock it. So I wish that it did have a fingerprint sensor. And then also just having 2 gigs of RAM with this phone is a little bit concerning, but I suppose at this price range, you can't ask for too much. The biggest selling point with this phone compared to the other ones here is that it does feature that massive 5000 milliamp hour internal battery, so I definitely appreciate that. Now the next phone that we're going to be checking out here is the LG G6. So this phone was actually launched several years ago, and it is a flagship phone technically, but since its launch, it has gone down in price significantly. And you can actually pick this phone up for well under $100 if you do decide to go the refurbished renewed route. Now you are going to have to go to eBay to find it for under 100 bucks. They do have some on Amazon that are close to $100. I believe there's one that I saw that was $115, but you can get this renewed on eBay for just $89.45. So very inexpensive, and you'll see in a second here that you really are getting a lot of really impressive hardware for the price. Now it is GSM unlocked, so you can pair it up with your favorite GSM carrier. You're getting a 5.7-inch display with the phone, but we have decently small bezels in the top and bottom. The phone features a 1440p display, which is pretty incredible. Now the display is LCD, but we're getting a 19:9 aspect ratio in Corning Gorilla Glass 3. Now up top here, we have a 5 megapixel front-facing camera, and we're getting 32 gigabytes of internal storage with the phone. You also get SD card expansion as well, so if you do want to expand that storage, you can just pop in a micro SD card. Now we do get a fingerprint sensor on the back, and the fingerprint sensor actually also doubles as the power button. So it's a very fast and responsive fingerprint sensor, so I'm a big fan of that. And also on the back of the phone, we have a dual camera setup. So there is no portrait mode with the LG G6, unfortunately, but we get a 13 megapixel main camera and a 13 megapixel ultra wide angle camera. So this is the only phone of these four that has the ultra wide angle camera. And overall, you're definitely going to be able to take better photos with this phone compared to any of the other phones. Now, the LG G6 features 4 gigabytes of RAM and the Qualcomm Snapdragon 821 processor. Now, I did run an Antutu benchmark test, just like I did with all these other phones. And you can see here that this score is a bit higher than the first two devices we looked at 167,717. So you will be getting better performance. And even though the Snapdragon 821 is an older processor, it's still going to handle heavy usage better than any of these other devices. In addition to that, this device can take video at 4K at 30 frames per second, which is another feature that you can't get with any of these other phones. Now, it features a 3,300 milliamp hour internal battery, and the software, at least on my LG G6, is Android 8 Oreo. Now, I've heard that some people have gotten the update to Android 9 Pie, but I personally have not. But overall, you're getting some very impressive hardware with this phone. Of course, a great looking display, as already mentioned, with a really awesome resolution of 1440p. Now, the phone has a nice high quality metal band running around the sides here, so it feels super solid and high quality. On the left side of the phone, we have the volume buttons. Then on the right, we have the slot for the micro SD card and SIM card. Then on the top of the phone, we have the 3.5mm headphone jack, and we have the noise canceling microphone. And then on the bottom of the phone, we have the USB-C port for charging and data transfer, we have the speaker, and we have the microphone. So nice to see that we do get USB-C with this phone, and that's a feature that I certainly like a lot. Now, taking a look at the backside of the device, we have a reflective material here that does pick up some fingerprints and dust. We have the camera module, we have the power button, which is also the fingerprint sensor, and then we have the G6 logo. There's definitely a lot to like about the LG G6, but if you do decide to buy one refurbished or used, it's certainly going to be a bit on the old side, and you have to keep in mind that the battery might not be quite as new and fresh compared to these other phones. And finally, the last phone I want to show you is the Moto E6. So this phone came out not too long ago, but you can actually buy it right now on Amazon Renewed for just $79.99. Now, if you want to buy it new, you do have to spend a little bit more than $100, but if you buy it renewed, it's going to be pretty close to brand new. Typically, devices that are on Amazon Renewed are phones that have been returned for one reason or another, typically just because people didn't want it for some reason. So you can get this phone for almost brand new for just $79.99, which is a great deal. But we're getting a 5.45-inch 720p display with no notch. It's an 18:9 aspect ratio display. We have a 5 megapixel front-facing camera. We're getting 16 gigabytes of internal storage with SD card expansion. There's no fingerprint sensor, unfortunately, with the Moto E6. There's also no wireless charging. The phone does feature a 13 megapixel camera on the rear, and there is portrait mode too, which is really awesome. We're getting 2 gigs of RAM with the phone, and the Qualcomm Snapdragon 435 processor. So I did run an Antutu benchmark test, so I'll show you the scores right now. And I got a total score of 71285. So the lowest score of all of these devices, unfortunately. So you'll have to keep that in mind. And I bet that's one of the reasons why this phone has gone down in price so much since it was first launched. Because this is the cheapest phone that you can get your hands on right now at just $79.99 from Amazon Renewed. Now the phone takes video at 1080p at 30 frames per second. It features a 3,300 milliamp hour battery, and it runs Android 9 Pie. And what's awesome about Motorola is that they do a really good job at deploying security updates and OS updates. So I'm not sure if you'll ever see Android 10, but I know that since getting this, I've gotten a variety of different security updates to keep the phone on the most up-to-date security patch. So there's definitely some value in that. But you can see as far as the design goes, pretty thick bezels on the top and bottom. And then on the left side, there's nothing. On the right side, we have the power button and volume button. On the top, there's the noise canceling microphone and 3.5mm headphone jack. And then on the bottom, we have a micro USB port. So the only phone here with micro USB, which is pretty disappointing. And we have the microphone. Now the back is removable, which is pretty cool. And I do like how it's a matte finish on the back side, so your fingerprints will not show up on here. But it's a pretty simple design with the camera module and flash and the Motorola logo. but I definitely wish that it did have a fingerprint sensor on the back. So overall, these are 4 phones that you can buy right now in 2020 at under $100, and I will be leaving links to these devices in the video description. But I hope you enjoyed this video. This is Kevin here. Let me know about your thoughts. And I know that there are many other phones out there as well that you can get for under $100, but these are 4 that I happen to have right now. And I'm sure through this year, I'll be making a follow-up video to this as I get more phones in that price range. But again, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.